Time to do rear brakes. So first off, jack the car, doing the rear end on first. Never rely just on jack in case it fails on you when you're under the car. Put some candles. You want to unlock first the lock nut, always on wheels, and then you go on the star patterns for the boat. So meaning if you start there, you go there, or you go there, and then so on. And you finish by torquing this one last always. So I bolted back the caliper with this screw bolt. And I put the plastic back to protect the anti-seize that I installed in the parking brake stuff. So now what you have to do, you have to punch these pins out. This pin here and this one here. They are long pins going all the way back. Let me try to show you with a light. They're long pins and they're going all the way through. You can see with this one here at the bottom more easily. So it's a pin with different diameters. So by taking this out, it's going to free the pads. So that's what I'm up to. This is the sensor for this thing here is the wear sensor. You can see the pin here. Then you should be able to pull out the pins, but sometimes it gets stuck a bit. So this is the pin. There's like a lock here. It's like a spring pin. I'm gonna replace these two pins. And you have here like a cross. That is like a device to hold the whole thing in place. It's doing a very good job at it right now. So here's the second pin. You can take the whole thing out. I'm changing those because it's been the car's been sitting there for a very long time, and instead of using old brakes and old discs that are going to be wear out and that's going to be out of round, the run out's going to be too big and the pedal is going to jump. So this is the thing that's holding the pads in place. It's kind of holding it open with the slope here. Now remove one pad, remove the other one. The brake sensor, the wear sensor, we have to replace it. So we're gonna proceed for that thing. So basically you just follow the wire, taking your time not to break everything along the way. First you need to open the little bleeder cap. Because it's wrapping around the wire. I don't want to cut it first because I like to make sure that it's not gonna be I like to be sure that the one I'm gonna have is gonna be the right length, else I might gonna have to try to save that one or run for another one that's gonna be the right dimension. I'm gonna have to check how this thing opens because I don't remember. Maybe with just a screwdriver. Yeah, just go. Let me show you. Okay, so the wire was clamped in the loop here for its final clamp. Then it was clamped. Let me grab my screwdriver. Where did I put it? Here. So if you follow the wire, it's going here, then it's clamped here with this rubber thing, just like this one here. So it's just, you need to put your screwdriver and just gently pull, and this thing's gonna open. I'll try to show you with the other one. So if you go here, just go here. That's all there is to it. So I'm clamping this wire. You go here, you go there. Then the wire goes here on the back through the spring. Then it's underneath here. Then it goes here, and then it's underneath here. So we're gonna follow the wire and show you where it plugs. Okay, so this one, we can see it clips from above. This is where it clips. So you kind of need to open it from the top here. Hard to show you, but here, you want to open it from here. It's not an easy task, but this is how you're gonna do it. So this was this one here behind the coil spring. So there's another one right here, which is the same. And then we have to go figure out underneath that thing. Okay, change of plans. I'm not gonna go through this bolt here at the bottom. This one and the two bottom one are, I got a good feeling they're about to break. So instead of that, I'm going to through the plastic ones. So there's one that was right here on the lower corner holding this thing here. That is the most access you're gonna get. And there's another one here, but it's mainly useless. So you can see the connectors are there. So normally you should be able to follow the wire and just pull the two connectors as one, unplug it, plug it back, and then clip it in that. It's like a little box where it's plugged. So this is a very strong suggestion. Try to do it without removing the others, else you might have a loose inner part here. It's hard to show you, but you see it's the white connector there, and there's black clips going along with it. See the squares? So you just pull that thing out from there. So this is what it looks like. It's clipped here as well on the wire at the base of the box. So you just need to unplug that thing, and this whole wire going all the way down is gonna go to your pad, right? So I'm gonna unplug that thing. The wire here that goes with it was going along on the top of the box, and we're just like making a sharp turn and down the connector. So it was just, it's not coming from above, it's coming from beside, and it's just clamped like that. So it's, when you remove it, you get this whole thing swinging down. Be careful not getting underneath that thing. There's a lot of sand that's gonna fall when you play on that area, sand and rock. So one last thing, when you want to unplug that thing, you need to push on that tab here. It might be squeezed a bit, stuck a bit with some dust, so you gotta shake it like you rock it a bit back and forth. I unsqueezed it already a bit, but it's still a bit tough to pull out. Here it goes. So now it's a matter of just making sure that the wire I have to replace it is the same length or slightly longer. So now inside the wheel you got the caliper right here. Inside them, deep down there, are two bolts. One here, the other one is, it's a bit higher. Yeah, you can see the two of them. These are 16 millimeters socket size, so you need to remove that in order to remove the caliper. Using a breaker bar like that swivels by the head, on the head, with a long socket, deep socket for the upper bolt. I did it with a short socket on the lower one. Maybe would have worked with the long one, I don't know. So just break them up, and then you can just go with a regular ratchet or by hand, according to if it's easy or not. Once you remove the two bolts, these bolts right there, you wanna give yourself some play between the pads and the disc. To do so, you need to grab your caliper, and you just try to pull it slowly, one side at a time. Try to pull it a bit to give a bit of room in between. If you're not lucky and your pistons are jammed, it's going to be a bit more difficult. You can use a huge screwdriver or a pry bar. I would try to go in between the pad and the disc if you can, because you'd rather damage the things you're going to replace than damaging the caliper. But if it's jammed, you're gonna have to try to find a way to do so. The idea is now to remove it. So if you can remove it, that's fine. Sometimes you can also put a big pry bar here in between the disc and the caliper and try to pry it like that. Now it's easy because I give it a bit of room. It was not so stuck. The other thing is, you don't want to let that thing hang by the hose, so you want to find a way to hook that thing up somewhere. Typically I take a steel wire and I hook it up somewhere in the car. When you got a coil spring that is mounted with the shock absorber, it's an easy one to do. Else maybe, since it's around here, if the hose doesn't permit, if it's not long enough to go hook it up there, you maybe want to hook it up somewhere around the suspension arms here or there. Just find a way to hang this thing so it's not hanging by its hose. So in the end I hook it up this way, around this arm there. You put the free hands far away so you're not gonna poke your eye with that kind of crap. Also, it's in here with the hole that I'm holding it. You just want to also make sure, trying to not damage too much your painting on your caliper if you want to keep it nice. So then you have to remove your disc. To do so, this is a hexagonal bit which is 6 millimeter. You want to tap that thing in. You just got one shot at this kind of thing, so make sure it's all the way in. Then you press firmly on it as you unscrew it, and then obviously you're gonna have to make sure to release your parking brake. This obviously the front wheel should be blocked, because now the parking brake and the transmission that could lock the wheels is high above. So the free wheels are up front and nothing blocks them, so you want to make sure they're not going to be able to roll. So this thing in here, The parking brake is a drum brake inside of that. This is kind of a drum, so that's why you need to free that drum brake, so by freeing your parking brake. The bolts looks like this one here, this little bolt there. You want to make sure that when you install these kind of bolt on a disc, you put some NTCs or never C's, because you might have a very hard time taking these out. One good thing also is to knock on the here with your hammer. It's gonna free the rust you might have there. Me, I always put some never C's on that flange on the hub, so that should help. It's a bit stuck. I'm gonna need maybe 2 hands to take that one out. Yeah, I think it's free now. With 2 hands I'm going to be able to take this out, so you get the idea. So I was able to took out the disc with 2 screwdriver inserted in the ventilation slots. Also, you can tap a bit on that and with a hammer, but the rocking it slowly both sides make magic. Did some magic on it. If trying to take your disc out and the drum stays stuck with the parking brake, that's because the drum with the parking brake had some wear, and then the drum surface, instead of being flat to it, is grooved inside. So on the back you got like a little ridge that holds on the shoe, so you cannot take this thing out because it wants to tear apart the brake. So the way you're gonna fix this, you gotta put your car both on neutral and remove the parking brake. You're gonna line up this bolt here. That's gonna line up also with a hole on the drum or disc if you prefer, and you gotta line this thing up with this thing here. You use a flashlight to make sure you're in line, and through the hole you're gonna play with this thing. It's either you move it up or down, I cannot remember. So this thing is gonna either tighten up the shoes inside the drum, or it's gonna free it. This is the self-adjustment. So if you use too much of your parking brake and it's wearing out, this is how it's gonna compensate for the wear on the pads. So by loosening up that thing, it's gonna get your brake shoe to shrink, and then you're gonna be able to remove your drum or your disc. I'm talking the drum inside the hub of the disc. So again, you need to free that thing. So I would say this is like noon, so this is about maybe 11 o'clock. I'm on the rear wheel on the passenger side, so the other one should be a mirror to that. So it's like 1 hour before noon towards the rear end of the car. This is where you should get that thing. So this is a good thing to know sometimes, because when you're stuck in there and you need to take your disc out, that might save your ass. Mine's supporting on this foam here. This surface here and this one here, and same thing, which is going to be this one here and this one here from that side. This is where the pads are gonna slide onto, so you want to make sure this is clean. So I'm gonna use some sandpaper, which is like a mesh So I'm gonna just swipe it a little bit to make sure to remove any rust, and then put a bit of anti-seize on it, and then it's gonna be time to push the pistons back in. There's two of them, so you can see one here, the other one obviously on that side. So we got to push that in to make room for the new pads, which are going to be thicker than the one that were there for or that I just removed. As you can see, the surface now is much cleaner than it was. I'm gonna wait, looking at these two, obviously these one are, you're looking at them from the back. So at this moment I'm gonna push the pistons inside first prior to put the anti-seize, and then we're gonna be on the anti-seize case. So the idea is to go with a clamp. Problem we might encounter is that we might have a situation where the clamp, when we push it, the other one gets out. So we have to go slowly. Sometimes by going slowly we're lucky. The friction is greater than the force we apply. So the piston on that side is fully in. So now it's going to be time to try to push the other one inside. This one is going to be a bit more of a challenge because it has the connection behind. So I have to find a way to do it. So we're trying to squeeze it inside slowly. This is the setup. So if the other one gets out, then we're gonna have to push back the other one a bit more. Else you put another clamp on this one and you should prevent that to happen. So now you want to put a little thin coat of anti-seize on the surface where the pad's gonna slide. You want to make a clean job. You don't want to have that on the disc. You try to wipe off any excess of that thing. Brake cleaner is your friend to remove that. Put some on a rag. I just put my hand on it. That happens. Forrest Gump made a t-shirt about it. Got to wipe up your gloves after that, because this is something you're gonna spread all over the place. If you have some, just clean it properly. This is what it looks like. It's better with the light like that. So both sides are about the same. You get a little surface inside where it's brushing against. It's more on the inside, you don't want to have too much, because this is where the disc is going by. So you want to try to avoid to get some in the middle, and you want to get some on both surfaces where it's gonna slide. So this is the lining for the parking brake, so I'm gonna go with some brake cleaner to clean those shoes, both sides. This flange here, if it's not nice, you want to brush it with what I have is a brush that I put on a drill, and I just brush around. This is not so bad, so I'm gonna put some of NTCs on the flange around the holes and here on the radius that you got there. So when you put the disc on it, the next disc won't stay stuck on it, so it makes your life easier when you have to remove your disc. So that's what I'm up to now. Another thing is you want to check your whole disc with your new disc. So what you do is you put them side by side, check the diameter, which means this outside diameter, the hub diameter. You can put them also side by side to check the thickness of each diameter, thickness of the disc, thickness of this diameter here, thickness of the other one. So if it's the same part, then you're good. If you see something wrong, well, then you have to go back where you got your disc and try to fix that thing. So when you're ready to install this thing, you want to clean this surface here with brake cleaner, also the inside here, which is the drum for the parking brake. So you gotta line up you gotta clean these two with the brake cleaner, and then you're ready to install this thing. Obviously the hole here is for the little screw here, the little bolt to hold the disc in place. You gotta make sure to align that hole with it, obviously, otherwise you won't be able to hold it in place. So now it's time to install the disc. So you want to set up your boat with the NTCs on the treads like that, and then you're good to insert that thing in there. You just bolt that in place. You torque that, but don't go too crazy. This is not gonna hold the car in place. This is just to hold the disc, and even if that thing will fall, it's gonna stay stuck behind the wheel, and really what's gonna hold the whole thing is gonna be the stud that's gonna hold the disc once it's mounted. So you'd rather be able to remove that bolt more than torquing it very heavily. So first off would be to reinstall the this sensor wire, starting from the box, clipping the plug on the box, and bringing it near the caliper. So that's the task at hand. So when clipping back that connector, look at it. There's only one way to insert that thing. So make sure to orient it the right direction. So now it's time to plug that thing, clip it back in there, and then following the little clips pattern, there were 4 of them, and bring this close to the caliper. When trying to clip that thing back in place, your best reference is the lower connector. It's the black bracket here. So if you clip that thing first, you can clip the white connector all the way up with these black. Hard to show you, but the black thing here. And when you go on top, you make sure that the wire is going to be set outside the clip. That's all there is to it. So put that plastic bolt back on, the other one here as well, then clip that thing here then on the back there, then in these two here. You just push the clip by hand, it's gonna clip back in place. The proper position for clips is easy, it's in between the two rubber thing. So then you end up with this thing loose. Once your disc is in place, it's a good timing to clean that surface with brake cleaner. It's the best timing to do so now that you clean the back side of the disc and the inner side of the parking brake drum. So now it's going to be time to install the caliper in place with the two bolts, and then we're gonna get ready for the brake pads. Okay, so now it's going to be time to set the wear sensor on the brake pad. So what you want to do is you want to choose one that's going to be the lucky one, and you want to insert the sensor this way on it. So it's you have to push it there. It's going to be clipped. It's going to be very hard to remove after that. Try not to break it. You don't want to break the thing here, like the L shape. So it's a bit of a challenge, but not so bad. So once you have this good, you just slide this thing here where it's gonna go, right? Then you take another pad, slide this one in as well on the other side of the disc. So now you have the wear sensor on the rear pad, the other one is up front, and now it's a matter of you have to set the cross there and the pins. The bolts, the two bolts for the caliper, you have to torque them kind of seriously. I don't have the torque at hand, but my guess would be it's around 30 to 50 pound feet. That's my guess, but you should double check that. It gives you an idea. These are strong bolts, and this is what holds your caliper in place. Okay, so this is the pins will slide through these holes. Let me put some light in here so you can see. So the pins gotta slide through the holes on the pads, both pads. There's two holes on the caliper, both sides, so the pin's gonna go all the way through it. So the spring pin goes on the back, and the cross is gonna go with the chamfer, or the angle is gonna be sitting on top of the pads like that, and the pins is gonna slide over that thing to hold the whole thing in place. And this is where it's gonna start to be interesting. So hammer must be needed. So you just gently tap this thing in place. Okay, so now you can see that the pin is in place a little. We gotta make sure we can insert this thing in here. So this is going to be like that. You can punch it a bit some more. So you want to insert that thing here. And you want to make sure that the other pad fits in there. So the other pad is in there. And then I'm going to wait to punch it final. It's in line now with the hole up front here. So now take a second pin if you don't, I think it's a good thing to replace these pins. They're not very expensive, but if it's if you don't, make sure you clean this gap here. Make sure the spring pin can work, but I would highly recommend to change that. It's not so expensive. This is not what's gonna cost you a lot on that job. It's nothing compared to the disc. So the pads are cleared. So now it's gonna start to be more interesting, because now we have to get it through this cross. So we're gonna have to push the cross and hold it down as we push the pin in place. And seems like the pin has got to line up. There's like 2 bumps, pins lining up with the further out one. So pin in place. Now we're gonna make sure it lines up with the pad. And now it's starting to be able. If I can suggest something, I would suggest you start with the upper one, because now the sensor is a bit in the way. So it's easier if you start with the upper one, then finish with the lower one. You're gonna have more access to play that game. Oops, sorry about that. So everything is aligned, cross is in place. So now it's just a matter of punching the pins to their final destination, and then we have to snap the cap of the bleeder around the sensor here with the in between the 2 rubber would be the best place to do so. So this is in place now. The other thing that's going to be really important is once you're done, you gotta go with a punch from underneath to punch that, and you do so until it's flush on the outside, on this side, until it's flush, looking at it from this side. So once you're done with that, I didn't have to play with the parking brake adjustment. If you had to do so, it's going to be important you line up the hole. In fact, I would suggest you line up the hole before you put your parking brake and before you put your drum / disc in place. What you want to do is you want to do both brakes done like the way they are right now. I mean with the pin final though. Once it's done, you want to turn it by hand, and you got to feel the drag that you have from the parking brake lining shoes in there. So you want to try both sides, right? And then you want to put you try to set them up so they're about the same. You don't want to put too much drag in there, else you're just going to wear out your landing brake for your parking brake while you're going to drive. And once this is done, you try it on both sides, try to compare. You do one side by hand, then you go the other side, and then you can come back, you go back and forth, try to see the feeling you have. Then you can set the parking brake to 1 notch, do again, try it both sides. You can put if you have a hard time, you can put 2 bolts, wheel lug nut bolts. You can put a hammer in there just to have a bit of leverage with the wood sleeve, so you're not going to break it. So you try it with 1 notch, you can try with 2 notch. Maybe with 2 notch you should have a very hard time to be able to spin that wheel. And that's about it. This is how you proceed. You go back and forth the 2 sides, and you compare and you try to set it so it makes sense. So not too much drag when it's free, but you want it to grip maybe after 2 or 3 notch. Some serious braking there for the parking brake. So this is all there is to it. And then put back once your 2 sides are the same for the parking brake braking force and drag, then you just want to put back your wheel in place and you're done.